In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the fundamental concept of Android activity cycle. So we know that activity is just a screen, right? So it's one of the first screens that you see once you start developing your app. And then you create subsequent screens or new activities so that when the user click on one button, it takes the user to the next set of screen. So that really, in a nutshell, is what activity is all about. So I'm going to talk about the activity lifecycle in Android, and then I'll demonstrate how it actually works by looking at our log files and really understand as well as learn hands-on the activity lifecycle. So as the user navigates through, out of, and back to your app, the activity instances in your app simply transition through different states in their lifecycle. So basically, the activity class is what provides a number of callback methods that allow the activity to know that a state has changed, that a system is basically creating, stopping, resuming an activity, or destroying the process in which the activity resides. So within this particular life cycle or callback methods, you can then declare how your activity behaves when the user leaves or re-enters the activity. For example, if you're building a streaming video player, you might pause the video and terminate the network connection when the user switches to another app. Now, when the user returns, you can reconnect to the network and allow the user to resume the video from the same location or same spot. So in other words, each callback allows you to perform specific work that appropriate to a given state of change. Doing the right work at the right time and handling transitions properly makes your app more robust and performant. So for example, good implementation of the lifecycle can help ensure that your app avoids first crashing if the user receives a phone call or switches to another app. Second, consuming valuable system resources. Third, could be losing the user's progress if they leave your app. And fourth, could be crashing or losing the user's progress when the screen rotates between landscape and portrait orientation. So that's really what the lifecycle fundamental concept is all about. So activity needs a way to keep valuable state, as I mentioned earlier, in user data that it has obtained. So for example, let me give you another example. A change of device orientation, right? I mentioned earlier, can cause the activity to be destroyed. So that way, you're basically working with one activity or the other as states are being changed. And this activity or activities are a fundamental part of Android app development. So let's look more closely at the life cycle of an Android activity. So when the activity is launched, notice it starts from the very top. So various methods that are initiated are on create, goes on to on start, and then on resume. And this implies that the activity is now running. So another activity comes into the foreground, it's going to go to on pause. If the activity is no longer visible, it's going to stop. And then if the activity is finishing or being destroyed by the system, it's going to use the on destroy method and the activity is going to shut down. So this is the top to bottom flow of a single activity once it's launched. So a simple activity workflow. So let me jump right in and let me first navigate to Android app here. So in order for me to demonstrate, I'm going to go ahead and create a new project right from scratch, so nothing really bothers you here. So let's go ahead and click on File, New Project. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this, the domain is claydesk.com. Just give folder location. And here you can choose to either include the C++ support or the Kotlin support. So I'm going to uncheck this for now. I'm going to do this in Java, and then we can take a look at how easy it is to use Kotlin language as well. So once I've filled out the necessary detail, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And of course, choose the API version, whether you're using 23, 22, 21, or any other. The latest one is API 28, which just came out, which is Android Pie. So you can choose any one of them. So I'm going to use the Oreo one because that's the one that we'll be using primarily. and then click Next, and choose Empty Activity, click Next, leave the default name as Main Activity. It is going to generate the layout file as well, because we're creating a new screen. Of course, the XML file will also be created along with it. So let's click Finish, and this is going to go ahead and create an absolutely new project. And then we'll take a look at how the concept of Android Activity Lifecycle works. So it's going to give it a few seconds to create our new project. So once the project is created, it's going to sync up with the Gradle file. And of course, I can navigate and expand my Activity Lifecycle app, navigate to the app folder, and here under the SRC folder, I'm going to see locate my main and then Java, and then by default it is going to create the main activity.java. Of course, the processes are still running, right? So once it's finished, I'm going to navigate back to the main activity.java file. And of course, I also get my Android manifest file, and under the res folder, I have the layout folder and my activity main XML file. That's the two files that it actually creates, along with, of course, the app Gradle, which is down here, and then your module build Gradle file. So we have all of these files being created as soon as we create a new project. Perfect. So once everything is built successfully, it's going to go ahead and open up both of these files, the main activity.java and then the activity main.xml. So we won't be requiring the XML in this particular lesson because I'm just going to demonstrate the activity lifecycle. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and close the XML file for now, and then we are going to work with our main activity.java. And at this point, I only have the Android support, the backward compatibility, and then of course the Android bundle. Those are the two packages that are part of this standard default blank application. So let's take a look at how the lifecycle activity works so we can identify within our log or the log cat, which is down below here. So before I actually navigate to log catalog or log cat, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to log the events. So if I were to bring up quickly my activity launch here, so the first, every time you create or you launch an activity, the onCreate method is actually initiated. So in fact, make this a little smaller so you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and first show you how this onCreate, how Android uses and creates the onCreate, and then we're going to navigate to onStart, resume, pause, stop, and destroy. So that will cover the entire life cycle, so to speak. All right, so let's jump right in. So within my class, I'm going to go ahead first. You'll notice that the very first method is the onCreate, which is by default, that's where it starts. And that's exactly where Android begins the first activities onCreate method. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create a class, log class, so we can actually see all of these in action. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and say log. And as soon as I, in fact, do the log class, notice it brings up, the IntelliSense brings up several options, right? So it's log.d, which is basically what I'm looking for the Android. So I'm going to go ahead and do log d, open the set of parentheses, and you'll notice that it defaults and kind of shows me that I need to import some utilities, right? So let's do that later. First, let's complete our lifecycle event. So I'm going to do log d, and then the string would be life cycle. I'm going to do a comma and also do the onCreate. So it's going to log the onCreate method, do a semicolon. Now, in order to fix up our import the necessary utilities, I'm going to do an Alt and Enter on my keyboard. And you notice on top automatically it imports the android.util.log. So this needs to be, in fact, within the same method. So I'm going to copy and basically remove and paste within the actual onCreate method. Okay. So now I have the logd lifecycle event, and I'm going to log the onCreate. So that way, when I try to run or do some activity, create an activity, or navigate or run any process or element within my activity screen, it's going to start to log in the logcat. So if I were to click on logcat, at the moment it's going to initialize ADB, which is of course if I do my app. But what I want to show you here is the activity lifecycle, right? So as we go from on create, I'm going to go ahead and then next do the on resume, on pause, and continue on with these. So next, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our next set of processes, which is the on start, right? So let's go ahead and see if we can log this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make some room here. And outside this, I'm going to create another override method. So a couple of ways I can do it. I can type the whole thing, or I can just right click and then click on generate, and then of course override methods. And then here I'm going to choose my next step, which in fact is the on start right here. So let's navigate down. Here's the on start method. Click OK. And it's going to go ahead and create the on start for me. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and log this as well. So let's go ahead. I'm going to copy, in fact, the first line here to save time, and then paste it here, and simply change the onCreate method to onStart. Okay, so you see the concept, right? You see what I'm doing, and of course, once you see an action, and this is good for error logging as well. So as you're developing your apps and you understand the activity lifecycle, you can use the logd to log errors and take a look at those as well. So for now, if I were to go ahead and in fact run this app, just for now, even though we're not done yet, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run this app. And of course, I need to create or choose any of these virtual devices. I'm going to see if I can able to choose this. Otherwise, we are going to go ahead and create a new one. So I'm going to click OK. And this is for the minimum SDKs API 27, which is greater than 26. So how about if I create a new virtual device quickly? So it's going to be phone, next is 5, click next. And then it's going to be for the Oreo, which is API level 26. That's what we're using. Select that, click next, finish. And this is going to go ahead and create the Android virtual device for us so we can actually see, once we open up our activity, how the activity lifecycle kind of works and logs it in our logcat. I'm just going to go ahead and, in fact, bring up the newly created virtual device. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to run the process, and then it's going to show us the activities as they're starting. And you'll notice as the process is running, it locates the emulator, right? So it's still running. So after a few seconds, you'll notice that once it successfully loads the emulator, it's going to demonstrate and show us all of these logs that we're actually logging, which is the onCreate method, onStart, and so on. So here it is. Notice as it's running, it finds the emulator and then it runs the logcat for us. So let me make it bigger so you can actually see what is happening as the emulator is being loaded. So once it's done, we'll try to locate how the activity is initiated with the onCreate. And notice once we're basically done or our emulator is loaded, and here's our new app. So let me go ahead and first go back to our main activity and then finish off our entire cycle events for the Android. So our next step is to do the on resume, right? So we did the on create, on start, and then I'm going to show the on resume, on pause, stop, and destroy. Okay. So let me go ahead and quickly do those as well. So let's go ahead and do another right click, go to generate, override methods, and then of course our next one is the on resume. So I'm going to go ahead and find on resume. Of course, you can search for the on resume as well if you cannot find it. Here's the on path, and here's the on, or on pause and on resume. So I'm going to pick on resume, click OK. And of course, just repeat the same steps as above. So copy the log, paste it, and then be sure to change to resume. All right, let's continue on. Let's go ahead, right click, generate, go to override methods, and then next is the on pause. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can find. Scrolling down, here's the on pause, click OK. Perfect. So you get the hang of it, right? So it's good practice for you to kind of take a look at and do this. All right. So here, instead of on resume, I'm going to make sure that it says on pause. All right. Let's go ahead, generate another method here. So override methods, and our next is the on stop method, and then of course finally we'll do the on destroy. So I'm going to go ahead and here's the on stop. Click OK. Perfect. So let me go ahead and finish this, and then simply change this to say stop. And finally, let's go ahead and do our last override. So do a generate, override methods, and then our destroy. Perfect. So simply copy the last line here, paste it, and on destroy. Great. So now that we're done, bring our logcat up here one more time. Let's navigate to our build, because once we're completed, once we're done with the entire activity lifecycle, right? So basically we did the on create, start, resume, on pause, stop, and then destroy. I'm going to go ahead and build our app first, and then I'm going to demonstrate the logcat as well. So once the build is successful, after the build is successful, we are going to go ahead and launch the app, and then you can see within the logcat as well. Great, so our build has been successfully completed. So here's our main activity.java. Next, I'm going to launch the app. So as soon as I launch it, here's my connected device. Click OK. I'm going to go ahead and click on logcat, right? So you can actually see being logged as the app is being pulled up. It's bigger here. Go all the way to the bottom. It's going to start the ABD right here. And here's our app. So I'm going to bring this up here as well so you can actually see. So the griddle is now, the build is now running. We are going to see the actual processes. Pull up our app, run all these processes, and here's our new activity lifecycle app hello world. So if I were to now take a look at my log, so here's the on create. Okay, so this is the on create method where the activity started. Okay, so if I were to bring picture up here, so notice this is the on create, the on start, and then on resume. Same thing. So it's going to do the on create, going to do the on start, and then on resume. So that way you can see how the processes based on the activity lifecycle is being generated. Now, of course, if I create a new activity, it's going to run and do the same thing again. So here's the fun part. So let me bring up my app again. Now notice within my app, if I were to click on the back button, right? So that's going to generate another activity. So let's see what happens if I click on the left arrow here, or close the app basically, right? So if I click on left, you notice it closes the app. And then if I scroll down, it's going to go ahead and first do the pause, right? Because that's my next activity cycle here. And then on stop, and then destroy. Okay, perfect. So here's the on pause, right? That's the lifecycle event. So it logs the on pause. And then, of course, right after on pause, I should be able to find the on stop and then on destroy. So this goes through the entire activity life cycle, which is right here. Okay, perfect. So I hope this helps. I just wanted to lay out the fundamentals of the activity launch and then, of course, the entire life cycle to activity shutdown. So if you have any questions, post them in the discussion area. As a homework, just go through the basic concept again. As you're building more activities, it's easier to understand. If you understand the life cycle, it's easier to run through the entire app building process. So with this, let's move to the next lesson.